Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, episode 4, and boy have I been crying because I have no idea what's happening anymore. The previous video took an interesting turn, bringing up a sin that Battler had forgotten from 6 or so years ago, which is when he cut himself off from the Ushiromiya family and ran away from his dad, and I guess his new mother, and his new sister. You guys get the picture. Something else seems to be going on. Beatrice was very distraught over Battler being unable to remember. So much so that the Beatrice that we saw in the story disappeared and the Beatrice that was outside the game board stepped in. Supposedly. Either way, Beatrice is not happy, but this isn't necessarily directly affecting her. This is not a sin that Battler, made against Beatrice specifically, but it really does involve her. And it seems to involve Battler's mother. He was unable to state in red that his mother is what's the name? Asumu? Maybe? Something like that. But it's for a fact that he's the son of Rudolph. Are we maybe questioning whether or not Battler's mother is who we think it is? Could it actually be somebody else? Somebody that maybe we haven't met? Maybe somebody that, is connected to Beatrice? Maybe there's some sort of real connection here? Fuck the magic and everything? I have no idea. Amakusa turned the radio off. The world of cheery sounds was immediately swallowed up by the roar of the sea, and blotted out by the ocean's gray. The boat captain pointed, but I couldn't really recall that scene of 12 years ago. I thought I'd surely be able to immediately remember how things had been at the time, but no memories came back to me. After that incident, the island was sealed off and left to the wild. I couldn't satisfy myself with the thought that this was just inevitable, and it felt sad and painful for some reason. But I at least remember one thing. You might say that it'd probably be the same anywhere on the sea, but I remember at least one thing. The cries of the seagulls. I do remember those. When I was young, I rarely went to the ocean, so everything that symbolized the ocean meant Rokkenjima and a family gathering to me. In short, it was a symbol for the happiness of going out with my family. However, at this point in time, it seems doubtful whether that even was happiness. In my younger days, the trip had felt like a relaxed family vacation, but considering my parents' situation at the time, it was surely a very difficult trip to handle, with the distribution of the inheritance filling the place with the smell of gunpowder. I can remember giggling all over the place, completely ignorant of my parents' feelings.
Rokkenjima desu kai? Subete no hajimari de subete no tabi no shūchaku eki tte wake da.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Amakusa, in an attempt to speak for my innermost feelings, I did not read the rest of that there, I just kind of skipped ahead. Innermost feelings tried to sound cool. The boat slowly rounded the island. I accidentally bumped my mouse wheel. I hope that viewing it at a different angle might bring back my memories of the island's silhouette at the time just a little. But in the end, even when that inlet was hidden completely by cliffs, I wasn't able to remember anything.
船長、さっきのもう一つの船着き場の話を聞かせてください。
ロッケン島には船着き場は一つしかないことになっとる。
Supposedly.
だがそれは表向きだ。
島裏のもう一つの隠された船着き場、ロッケン島そのものね。誰も知らない二つ目のもう一つの顔がある。
ロッケン島はUshiromiya家の領有する島だ。だが金蔵さん個人が所有する島というもう一つの顔がある。
一つの島、 2つの船着き場、愛人を囲うためだけに随分と金をかけたもんだ。
もう一つの船着き場のことを知る人間は？
限られとる。金蔵さん、執事の源氏さん、わしら船の関係者、高齢の使用人がほんの数人だ。南城診療所の先代先生も熊沢のばあさんも知っとった。数えりゃ結構いるような気がするが、とにかく知っている人間はわずかだった。
I mean, compared to like the rest of the world, yeah, not a whole lot of people knew about all this.
そのもう一つの屋敷について教えてください。
クワドリアンちゅう名前のお屋敷があるとだけは聞かされとった。わしは船を離れることを許されんかったから一度も見たことはないが。
So he just knew of the existence of it.
船着き場からは
There
見
was
えない
certainty
く
for
らい
him.
に遠いということですかい？
わからん。ただ隠し屋敷だからな。外からは見えん場所に建ててあったろうな。とにかくクワドリアンについてはあの島の最高の秘密だった。
クアドリアンにベアトリーチェが住まわされていた、あるいは幽閉されていたという。
わしはクワドリアンへの雑貨も運んでおった。その中に女しか使わんような、それも高級なもんが含まれることも多かった。わしもその説を確信しとる。
では船長はベアトリーチェって女を直接見たことはないわけですかい？
I mean, how could have you?
ない。20年近く出入りをしたが一度も見たことはない。
20年？ひゅー。ってことは最低でも年齢プラス20ってわけだ。こりゃマドモアゼルは期待できねえな。
だがクワドリアンへの出入りはある日を境にぷっつりとなくなっちまった。今からだいたい30年前だから昭和43年頃だったと思う。
Now, does that actually tie in with what Rosa was recalling back in episode 3?
突然？
食料やゴミなどの運搬往来でわしらは決められた日程で裏に行っとった。ああ、裏っちゅうのはクワドリアン側の船着き場のことだ。
I kind of connected the dots on that one.
わかります。それで？
ある日源氏さんから急な連絡があった。別の指示があるまで裏には行かなくていいって言うんだ。
別の指示とは？
特にはなかった。早い話がある日突然裏には今後定期便はいらない、食料も届けなくていいと言われたわけだ。わしは最初クビにされたのかと思ったよ。だがすぐに気づいた。それにクワドリアンのことを知る使用人たちの様子からもなんとなく察しがついた。
ベアトリーチェが死んで食料を届ける必要も世話人を送る必要も。
So does this all kind of confirm what Rosa was talking about in episode 3 then?
わしはそう考えとる。それっきり裏へ船を出せという指示は受けてない。しかし裏については死ぬまで何も喋るなと。その後源氏さんが直接わしのところへ来てえらく強く念を押した。
Yeah, you're definitely doing a fantastic job of all that.
その
It obviously doesn't matter
20
now,
年
of
間も放置
course.
されていた隠し屋敷にどうしてエヴァおばさんが？
On that day 12 years ago, Ushiromiya Eva somehow escaped harm alone in a hidden mansion 2 kilometers away from the mansion. Why was she in a hidden mansion that had been forgotten for 20 years?
ワイドショーで見たよ。わしにも何が何だかさっぱりわからん。エヴァさんを裏へ案内したことは一度もない。どうやってクワドリアンを知りたどり着いたのかわしにはさっぱり見当もつかない。
裏のクワドリアンに陸路で行くことは不可能だったのかしら？
It is.
もしも話通りに未開の密林だとしたらおめかしした奥様風情に踏破できるもんじゃありませんぜ。
じゃあ回路？モーターボートみたいなものがあったとか？
まさかあの二晩の台風はそりゃひどいもんだった。船なんぞ使えるわけもない。
じゃあ屋敷とクワドリアンを直通する
Well, supposedly there
地下
is.
通路のようなものがあったとか？
However, and I'll, kind of go into it a little bit more once we get to the absolute end of this episode. I don't think there ever was an underground passageway. I think a whole lot of what we saw here was baloney, if you will. I don't know if there was such a passageway that would have led between the two. But at the same time, it kind of makes sense if Kinzo were to just disappear for hours at a time during the day.
愛人の家へ出入りするのに毎回船の用立てが必要なんて面倒でしょ。
全長 2km のロッケン島の対角線上に存在する屋敷をつなぐためにそんだけの長い地下トンネルを
That's a lot of construction.
とバカにしてえところだが愛人のために隠し屋敷まで作っちまう大富豪だ。それも否定できんところですな。どうなんですか船長。
わしは海の人間だ。穴のことはわからん。だが硫黄島で旧日本軍は25キロのトンネルを掘ってみせたぞ。あの金蔵さんなら2キロくらい掘ってみせてもわしは何も驚かん。
やっぱりおかしな島ね。私たちはこの島のことを未だ誰一人何も知らない。
Can we get to the island already? I want to explore. The boat reached the shore, thank God. They would have to walk a short ways to reach the mansion.
わしはここで待っている。屋敷は向こうだ。当時の道が残っているだろうが、草木で覆われてしまってるはずだ。
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
迷わんように気をつけてな。
ほんじゃ行きましょうかね。
ありがとう天草。あんたもここで待ってて。
ま、そう言い出すんじゃないかと思ってましたぜ。
届け物をするだけよ。あなたが一緒だと向こうが迷惑するの。あんたの毒素強そうだから。
毒素はて。
すぐに戻るわ。今日の本命はクワドリアンの方だもの。届け物をしたらすぐに戻ってくるわ。
Ange put on her knapsack, holding the flowers she would offer.
さしてやれ若いの。行ってこいお嬢ちゃん。あんたの家族が待っている。
I mean, I get it. I do. I understand why she would want to go alone here. That doesn't look too bad here. Obviously, they're just reusing the backgrounds. I mean, there's no way of telling that this is bad or worse than how it was, but we can absolutely assume. I had never been on a road like this, but I had no trouble finding my way. If I walked straight ahead, it would probably guide me to the final destination for everything. It was true that the vegetation was incredibly thick, and if I didn't pay attention, I would lose track of the path. But the road that was left was much clearer than I had guessed it would be. Still, that didn't change the fact that it was a bad road. Contrary to the distance shown on the map, I was forced to walk a long way. The forest was deep and dark. At the time, I had been threatened into staying away from the forest because a witch lived there. And of course, that fear is gone now, but I feel it. Because I was me. I could feel the presence like an aura of the golden witch Beatrice. Here and there were massive fallen lumps of rock, along with overgrown trees and ivy. And the voices of birds and bugs. Yeah, I feel it. I feel that the witch is here. Ahead, an ivy-covered construction site fence and warning signs stood. No entry, Tokyo Metropolis. That was written on it. Well, who's gonna stop us now? They're not here. Yeah, that's right. When you think Tokyo, you tend to think of a city. But Rokkenjima is also located within the Tokyo Metropolis. Apologizing to the sign for my rude mistake, I climbed the fence. When I crossed the steep slope beyond that, my field of vision rapidly expanded, and a fresh sea breeze blew through my hair. It was like the top of a little hill. Below me was a vast view of the island. I could only see desolated forest and rock walls spread out below me. But I realized that the mansion was probably somewhere around there. The steep downward slope beyond this hill had probably been caused by earth and rocks collapsing from 12 years of wind and rain. It had become a slant filled with crags that you might even call gentle cliffs. And it would be easy to tumble down, though it looked like climbing back would be pretty difficult. In any event, it seemed that proceeding any further would be impossible. If I continued any further, I wouldn't be able to return. In other words, this is the border. This place is 1986 and 1998. And it is that day and today, the boundary between this world and Nirvana.
ここがこの旅の終着点みたいね。
Damn, that actually does suck that we can't traverse further. As the strong winds blew Mamoon's and Sakutaro's hair, they looked down from the hilltop.
ここからじゃさっぱりわからないわ。お屋敷はどこ？もっと近づきましょうよ。無理だよ。戻ってこれなくなっちゃうよ。
We won't be able to come back. Is that it? I see. This is 1998, and I am the Ushiromiya Ange who has been left all alone. At first, this was a journey to die, but not anymore. It's become a journey to accomplish something.
だからごめんね、二人とも。あの日の私なら何も戸惑わずにこの崖を降りるだろうけれど。
ビルの屋上から飛び降りた後ろ宮エンジェが情けない。
ごめんね。
ここでも同じだよ。あの日の風が感じられるから。こんな風だったっけ？
Yeah, if not worse.
もうすぐ来てくれるよ、みんな。
Sakutaro said it as though it was completely natural. And I believed it. Mom, Dad, Oni-chan, all of my relatives and those fun servants, and Maria One-chan.
私よ、エンジェよ、私は帰ってきたわ。
When I started my journey to expose the past of 12 years ago, my goal had been abstract and I hadn't understood. But now I have no doubts. This journey was induced by several thoughts and fates over 12 years. A journey to reach an end for me, Ushiromiya Ange. And a journey to reach an end, there we go, as the last witch of Mariage Sorcière. I came here as the last daughter of the Ushiromiya family, and as the last witch.
お父さん、お母さん、お兄ちゃん、ごめんね。先にマリアお姉ちゃんとの挨拶をさせてね。
A strong tailwind urged me on. Will it work? That tailwind took just my soul out from inside my body to the vast forest beneath me. And though from here on I couldn't see, I believe that it flew me to the mansion on that day, to where everyone was, to where Maria One-chan was. And so, even though my body was on the top of a hill, a strong wind blowing against me, my soul was now certainly dancing through that sky. The vast, vast sky of Rokkenjima. Below me was the green of many trees. But I understand. I can comprehend the presences of my family and relatives and all the servants. And Maria One-chan too. I could even comprehend Maria One-chan as a witch. It was vast, more so than any vast space I had imagined up until now.
マリアお姉ちゃん、聞こえる？聞いて。
Ange called to the Maria of that day. She told her of the long journey she had undergone, of her long-delayed realization of just how much she had wounded Maria in her youth. She understood magic, and now understood everything about the world Maria had wanted to show her. It was very warm, overflowing with love and happiness. She wanted to become even happier by sharing that world, but I trampled it.
だから私、今こそ全部理解したの。魔法を。私たちの魔法はきっと、とてもささやかで、身近に溢れてる。でも、それは誰の目にも見えるものではないのよ。魔法とは、はっきり言えるわ。
Without love, it cannot be seen. Sorry, One-chan. I've already been excommunicated from the Alliance of Witches. but now I understand how wonderful it is. And I know that after the day I wounded you, Mariage Sorcière was transfigured into something different from what you truly desired. Even the magic that spat anger by cursing people was probably important to One-chan in those days. One-chan's environment was sad enough to permit that.
でも、もうそんな悲しい日々は、だからお姉ちゃんの魔女同盟を元の優しいマリアージュ・ソルシエルに。
The grimoire was in my hands before I realized it. The strong winds were rapidly blowing its pages one after another. That world had been kind in the beginning. How could you give birth to magic that would make candy fall from the sky? How could you give birth to magic that would make tomorrow's dinner cream croquette? How could you give birth to magic that would make the weather good when you went out the next day, making your whole day fun? New spells of happiness were created one after another, coloring her world with kindness. Those days were flipped through one after another, and months began to flash by. The pages with drawings that had once been colorful gradually began to change into the color of black ink. Eerie magic circles and demon summonings, evil magic for harming people. How could you give birth to magic that would cause the class bully to catch a cold? How could you give birth to magic that would seriously injure someone in class so that they died? How could you give birth to magic that would cause a bus loaded with all the bullies to fall off a cliff? Malicious spells were created one after another, burying the pages and her heart.
私がお姉ちゃんを傷つけたからマリアージュ・ソルシエルはこんなになってしまった。お姉ちゃんは黒き邪悪な魔女じゃない。白き無垢で無邪気な優しい魔女だったのよ。私が元に戻してあげる。元のみんなを幸せにする魔法を世界中に振りまいていたマリアお姉ちゃんに戻してあげる。そのために私はここへ来た。運命に導かれてきた。お姉ちゃん、聞こえてる？その姿を私の前に見せて。
That voice rode an even stronger wind and was sent 12 years into the past. Then the wind gradually ceased and silence fell. Is she going to appear? There's some crunching. I could hear the sound of gravel being stepped on. I listened to those footsteps, surprised at this miracle. Without a doubt, those were Maria One-chan's footsteps.
マリアお姉ちゃん。
Oh.
かすみよ。
Oh no, dude. Oh, bro, push her down the fucking cliff.
ようやく見つけたわよ。エンジェちゃん。
Before I knew it, Aunt Kasumi and her black suits, a total of 7 people who didn't resemble Maria One-chan in the slightest, were standing there, surrounding me. And it felt like my voice had been just about to reach Maria One-chan too. Because of these guys' toxin, that magic was cut off. Ange clicked her tongue at that, but Kasumi probably didn't hear it that way.
そのお花は亡くなった家族への？偉いわ。それ投げるんでしょ？いいわよ。それまで待ってあげる。
Just what are you waiting for? But Ange could more or less guess. The way the black suits unnaturally stuck their hands into their pockets clearly brought to mind the likelihood that they had handguns. This is a deserted island. There could be no more convenient place to dispose of someone. I have absolutely no interest in the family matters of the Sumadera family, but if I die, all that wealth will go to them. Unlike me, they're probably very interested and concerned about this matter, Of course, it seems that if the massive amounts of stock I own suddenly go to them, it'll be pretty bad for the Ushiromiya group as well, and they're apparently having a secret feud, fighting over me all by themselves. That's probably why President Okunogi gave me Amakusa as a guard. Having Amakusa wait on the boat was a regrettable mistake.
おばさん、いつからここで待ち伏せを？
早朝からよ。おかげですっかり待ちくたびれちゃったわ。何しろ喫茶店もお化粧室もないからね。
トイレもないから、お上品に木陰で用を済ませていたわけね。
仮にもスマデラ家の血を半分引いてる淑女が、そんな汚らわしい言葉を使うんじゃないわ。やっぱりスマデラキリエの子ね。気品のかけらもありゃしない。
She grabbed me by the hair and forced my face up to hers, and then spat at me. My words might be filthy, but there's no worse than her spit.
おばさんが私のことを話すと、いつも母さんのことばかり。私、そんなにも母さんに似てますか？
ええ、似ているわ。その生意気そうな目つき。鼻も口もそっくりよ。自由奔放で無責任。歴史と伝統あるスマデラ家の重みなど何も考えず、自分勝手に家を飛び出したわ。おかげで私の人生はずっとその尻拭い。
まさにあんたの人生、クソまみれね。
When I was slapped on the cheek, my ear was smashed, and for an instant my head rang. My hair was pulled, spinning me around, and I fell to the ground. And in a flash, the ground was kicked, and I was struck with sand.
ああ、本当に姉さんに似てきたわ。その目つき、そのどこか小馬鹿にした目つきよ。はあ、思い出すわ、いろいろと。
哀れな人ね。きっと幼い頃から何かにつけて母さんに比較されて蔑まされてきたんでしょうに。そしてあんたは一生その惨めさから解放されやしないわ。
お前みたいな小娘にはわからないわよ。あんたのお母さんはね、何もかもを投げ出してスマデラ家を逃げ出した負け犬なのよ。その負け犬のせいで私がどれほど迷惑したことか。
あんたの迷惑なんか私の知ったこっちゃないわ。私の生まれる前の話をされても困るわよ。あんたの人生はいつ始まりゃしないわ。いつまでもいつまでも永久に死んだ母さんに嘲笑われ続け、そのまま死ぬのよ。というか死ねばなんで生きてるの？
Damn.
この口の減らないガキが。
You gotta love how much these two are at each other's throats here.
あんたたち、ちょいとお茶をしてやりなさいな。
お任せを。口の利き方も知らねえクソガキが少し勉強させてやるぜ。
The black suits dashed up to me, violently grabbed me by the nape of the neck, and dragged me down.
私が一服終えるまでに適当に可愛いメイにちょいと身の程を教えてあげなさい。
Well, this is fun. Sumadera Kasumi. When I think about it, she was a pitiable person. To the outside world, women of the Sumadera family were trained to be in a position that supported and deferred to men. But in actuality, strong leadership was required from them, so that they could manage all the common people. The role demanded of them really was that of a female commander, like a literal reading of the word okami. Managing the Sumadera family with all its traditions was not something that could be accomplished with just an ordinary level of dignity. It was an unimaginably heavy responsibility. Normally, this would have been demanded of Kirie. Kirie had undergone that harsh training, and Kasumi, as the younger sister, should have been able to take it easy. No, on the contrary, she had lived like a lazy, selfish, and affluent princess, sneering at Kirie, who had been given the heavy responsibility. However, Kirie had suddenly been disinherited. She had refused the fiancé her parents had arranged, and had gotten pregnant by her lover, Ushiromiya Rudolph. And the rest is history. From the Sumadera's perspective, even though the Ushiromiya family held a vast fortune, it was a low-level family that had already collapsed. And to become not even a legal wife but a mistress to the second son of that family? Well, normally a daughter of the main family would be shown no mercy for such dishonor. They would wrap her up in a mat, place a pole on end, and throw her either into the Pacific Ocean if the pole fell to the right, or the Sea of Japan if it fell to the left. But Kirie's punishment ended with disinheritance, an unbelievably warm-hearted decision. After that, the Sumadera family began receiving favorable treatment from a section of the Ushiromiya group. There must have been some kind of backroom deal. In other words, Kirie openly left the Sumadera family under the pretense of gaining financial support from the Ushiromiya family. Kasumi had watched it happen in shock. No, she even disparaged her dishonorable sister as a loser. But eventually, she realized that the heavy responsibilities Kirie had borne would be passed on to her. And then, for the first time, she saw that she had been outwitted.
あんたの母親のせいで私の人生はめちゃめちゃにされたわ。
Was it really?
いいえ、一度殺されたと言ってもいい。あの日に私は一度殺されて地獄のような日々に突き落とされたのよ。
それまで人生舐めてきたツケじゃない。
口の減らねえ小娘だぜ。うら!
I mean, we are having a conversation here. The black suit punched me in the gut and I doubled over. But I was quickly grabbed by the nape of the neck and made to stand up again. Kasumi cold-heartedly looked down at me, smoking a cigarette. The painful days after Kirie had left were floating through her mind. Until then, she had been allowed to be a simple lady, freewheeling and naive. Only the older sister, Kirie, had been harshly trained, and she, the younger sister, had been able to live as nothing more than a princess. Then suddenly everything got flipped over, and her life came crashing down.
私の人生も生活も生き方も事情を知らない親類からは姉さんの不名誉を理由にどれだけ蔑まれたことか。呪ったわ。あなたのお母さんを血を吐くほどに呪ったわよ。
そりゃ嬉しいわ。これからもよろしく。
A kick landed in Ange's side as she crawled on the ground. Yeah, she's getting the shit beat out of her, but she's more than willing to keep on talking back. Ange didn't stand up again, so she continued to lie there like a caterpillar as she was kicked each time she spoke up.
姉さんを後ろ宮グループのパーティーで見かけたわ。あいつ、旦那と一緒でとても幸せそうに笑ってやがったわ。私に全部を押し付けて自分だけ幸せに。
だから何？私に八つ当たりするとどうあんたが幸せになるってわけ？私に八つ当たりすると時間が巻き戻って歴史が変わったりしてくれるわけ。
I mean, she's got a good point here. What's happened has happened.
あんた、さっき言ったわね。私の人生はいつ始まるの？いくら恨んでも八つ当たりしても時間を巻き戻すことなんてできない。じゃあ私は死ぬまでこうして死んでもなお姉さんを恨み続けて？冗談じゃないわ。いつまで私は姉さんの亡霊に苛まれてなきゃならないのよ。だから考えたのよ。これを成し遂げたら全ての恨みを忘れてやり直せるってね。
Ange was about to lash back out at her, but stopped, because she'd be kicked again if she responded. Even if Kasumi didn't say any more, Ange had a pretty good idea what she meant. Kasumi thought that by taking revenge against Kirie's daughter Ange, she'd be able to put an end to her hatred. Talk about pushing your problems onto other people. For real.
ほら、立ちなさいよ。そんなにこの島が大好きなら。しっかり深く埋めてあげるわよ。その若さで死にたくないでしょ。母が迷惑をかけてすみませんでしたとか。
誰が言うもんか。
エンジェ様、ダメ！こいつらを挑発しちゃダメです！ ここは表向きだけでも調子を合わせて時間を稼ぐべきです。
Buy time for what?
くだらないプライドは燃えないゴミの火に出しとけってよく言うわね。
天草さんは天草さんが来てくれればきっと。ダメ、あいつの姿は見えないわ。エンジ様のバカ、どうして天草を置いてきたんです？
I didn't need Mamoon to tell me. I was seriously regretting it already. I walked a long way. The forest was very thick. I've got no doubts the signs of activity here won't reach the boat. During the time it took for Kasumi to finish casually smoking a whole cigarette, I was continuously tormented by the black suits, as she had told them to. The moment I grabbed at my head, my scalp was kicked by someone at a bad angle, and my head was filled with stars. The feeling of stars flickering in this gray, twisted world was one I remembered clearly. My life was very similar to the one Sumadera Kasumi led. After all, as the successor of the Ushiromiya family, I was tormented constantly with various kinds of bullying, under the guise of education and training. Yeah, having the inside of my head filled with stars like this is a feeling I know well. When being reprimanded for some error in manners I seemed to have made, well, the discussion always turned to whether I was fitting to be the successor or not. On and on about the honor of the Ushiromiya family and how deep that was. By the time the conversation had reached that point, I'd forget what mistake I was being blamed for in the first place. God damn, what a face. No, in fact, it was the same for Aunt Ava. After all, sometimes she'd ask herself, what was it again? But in the end, she wouldn't be able to remember and would say something like, okay, yeah, at that point, that's just straight up abuse. There'd be some ridiculous reasoning like that, and then she'd keep on punishing me. Yeah, Aunt Ava's punishment wasn't something that would continue until I learned something, or acknowledged my mistake or apologized. It would continue until Aunt Ava wanted to stop. So this violence was a bit nostalgic in a way that made me want to vomit. This is all so unfortunate, really. I opened my eyes and look, there's Aunt Ava, right next to Kasumi, who's smoking a cigarette. I can see Aunt Ava, almost as though the two of them are laughing together. When I think about it, even Aunt Ava's life might be a thing worthy of my sympathy. The responsibility and pressure of being a member of the Ushiromiya family, which she often mentioned to me, had probably caused her great pain. After all, people can't make insults that they've never been the targets of themselves. It was probably the same for Aunt Rosa as well. As the youngest child of the honorable Ushiromiya family, she must have gone through many tough times. So it was just like what Aunt Ava did to me. Just like what Sumadera Kasumi is doing now. Aunt Rosa must have been the same. People tend to push the pain they're burdened with onto other people. Otherwise, they can never escape from that pain. So on, an eternity and perpetuity, the chain of pain and sadness does not end. That is the reason Maria One-chan's magic was so incredible. With her magic, she didn't have to bear the pain caused by Aunt Rosa. The pain probably was pushed onto her. Its weight probably tormented her. But One-chan didn't carry that burden on her own shoulders. She purified it and filled her world with happiness. So I'm sure, if Maria One-chan had children in the future, she probably wouldn't have pushed the pain that had been forced onto her, or first forced on her, onto her children. That chain of pain and sadness that stretched back for who knows how long, which she couldn't understand and which she had inherited, which had been forced onto her, Maria One-chan cut it with her magic. It ended with her. In the past, I would have snapped back. I would have met her hatred with hatred, so that they'd cancel each other out. Yeah, that's totally how it works. No, nothing got canceled out. The thing being forced on me ended up right there on my shoulders. Just like how even now I hate her. So now that I know of magic, I'll look at the human called Ushiromiya Eva again. What I could see through too was a sad human form, no different from me, who had lost her family and who bore deep wounds in her heart. Unable to withstand the pain of that torn heart, she was doing nothing more than howl sadly, like a lion crying in pain, like a child. Even Ushiromiya Eva was someone that I should have felt compassion for. She needed someone to understand the difficulties and pain of her childhood years. Even she, who was the only survivor of the Rokkenjima crime, who was faced with the curiosity of all society, who was publicly slandered and forced to have salt continually flung into the wound, had needed someone's compassion. In order to let Eva forget her pain and sadness at least a little, the Black Witch taught her magic, just like the times it had possessed Aunt Rosa. It was the same magic of anger and sadness that Beatrice had taught Maria One when she was mourning for her torn-apart friend Sakutaro. That same magic, that witch, had probably dwelled inside Aunt Rosa too. So I mustn't hate Ushiromiya Eva. Maybe I should have become her ally, as the only person in the world who could understand her. What did I say to her when I was young, when she returned alive all alone? Could it be that I acted as though she had killed my family and returned on her own? I can't believe it. Aunt Eva, who has never been more than an object of and a synonym for hatred throughout my life, is turning into a human I can understand. So, I can see, right next to Aunt Eva, the form of the Black Witch who taught her the black magic. Ugh. God damn, bro. I really do not miss Eva Beatrice from episode 3. I really don't. Aunt Eva was crying. It was only natural. Not only was no one willing to understand the pain of losing her husband and son at once, but her only relative had insulted her, saying, "Give me back my dad and mom." I can make the excuse that I was merciless because of my youth. However, to her at the time, it had probably been cruel enough to sever the last thread in her heart. In the following days, the talk shows and magazines publicly slandered her. The truth of her husband's business and character, and even her beloved son, were negated. She no longer had anything left. She could do nothing but cry and howl, trying to forget the pain and sadness, at least for a while. After all, she could only feel a tiny bit of release, and only during the time that she howled. And so the Black Witch taught her how to howl. The one I hated was the Black Witch. Black magic can probably release one from that pain for an instant. However, it never lifts that weight from a person's shoulders. On the contrary, it forces that weight onto further victims, filling the world with hatred. If only Aunt Eva knew of white magic and had a true witch nearby. Shouldn't that have been me? Didn't I learn the magic to create happiness from Maria One? If I had taught her with that magic, could we have built a future with a completely different relationship? Up until now, I've hated Aunt Eva constantly, so I didn't notice the Black Witch beside her. Without love, it could not be seen. I didn't have any love for her. So now finally, I'll glare at the Black Witch, the one I truly should hate. Oh, god damn it. Alright, nope, we're done. No, I really am out of time. It's late. I gotta, hop into bed and get ready for another lovely day at work. But this is interesting. I had a feeling that we'd probably be seeing the pursuers that Ange has had here this entire time. At some point, again, it seemed like they were on the right trail. It's just we didn't know if they were trailing or if they were ahead of the game, and it really was the latter, it seems. But now we're connecting Eva Beatrice into the story a bit here, which you can say definitely makes sense since, well, the cause of the supposed cause of things here is from Eva having this, you know, witch within her. You know, her past self, you know, exceeding all the limits of the magical world and becoming Beatrice, basically. So she became a very annoying antagonist in episode 3. Of course she's going to be sticking around for events that happened after episode 3, which is here and now. So I wonder, what are we going to get out of her in the next video? Thank you guys for tuning in here. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. Look, we're almost at 100 hours of playtime. Wowzers. Almost there. Anyways, yep, see you guys in the next one for more Umineko fun. Take it easy.